Welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family, love, and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Christopher Robbins, the co-founder of Familius Publishing, husband, father of 9, author, fly fisherman, backpacker, and aspirational musician based in the beautiful Central Valley of California. We hope to bring you nourishing, real-life information about love, family, relationships, and life. Well, today we're welcoming our guest, Kelly Bennett. Now, Kelly has been writing professionally for more than 30 years, both fiction and nonfiction. Her love of writing can be traced back to when she was 2-ish and used her mother's black mascara and lipstick to write on the neighbor's car. She's been telling stories and writing ever since. Her award-winning books, including Not Norman, A Goldfish Story, Vampire Baby, Your Daddy Was Just Like You, The House That Ruth Built, and her latest, Out of the Mouth of Babe, Babe Ruth on life, pitching, hitting, striking out, and coming back swinging. Celebrate all that goes into being a kid, families, friends, pets, fun, and games. She holds an MFA in writing for children and young adults from Vermont College of Fine Arts and is a long member of the SCBWI, OWFI, and Authors Guild. A native of California, Kelly was born with salt water in her ears and the sound of the sea humming through her veins. She's a weed picker, veggie chopper, two-wheeler, and unreliable hitter based in West Hampton Beach, New York, and Mimiville, which is anywhere her grandboys may be. Well, today we're discussing baseball. And more importantly, what can we learn from the legendary Sultan of SWAT, the great Bambino, George Herman Babe Ruth? The information shares aligned with the familius habits learned together and played together. And you can learn more about the familius and habits of happy families by going to the Habit Hub blog on familius.com. For the video of this podcast, please tune in to the Familius YouTube channel. So Kelly, well, it's almost April. Baseball is right around the corner, but welcome for joining us. I guess you're not suiting up with pitchers and catchers.
Thanks for having me today. Spring training's on, so we're already watching baseball. Yeah. And everybody, well, so you said I have 4 grandboys between the ages of just turned 7 and 11, so they're all trying out for Little League. So we're already baseball crazy around here.
That was my favorite time of the year. I played on the Dodgers and the Yankees, and we won the championship twice.
Oh, well, good on you. First of all, I want to say to Familius and you, thank you for giving me the opportunity to write about Babe Ruth and really dig into him. When we started, I wrote The House That Ruth Built with you and started out as a poem, really about Yankee Stadium and how Yankee Stadium was created, and Yankee Stadium, as they nicknamed it, the house that Ruth built, the largest, grandest stadium ever, the only baseball field to be called a stadium, came about because of one player, Babe Ruth. And while I was researching the book, of course, I was researching everything about baseball and so much about baseball and so much about Babe Ruth. And I started thinking, he was born February 8th, 1885, more than 130 years ago. How is he, this player, still the guy that is the most famous player in the world? How is it that he set records back then, 100 years ago, that baseball players, professional baseball players, Aaron Judge, Sammy Sosa, are still chasing? And the more I researched the house that Ruth built, the more I found out that Babe Ruth, this kid that grew up in an orphanage, his parents gave him away at 7 years old because he was incorrigible. They believed that he was probably ADD. He definitely had a lot of energy. He was smart, a little bit naughty. They gave him away and put him into a boys' home at 7 years old with 300 other kids. He was not a good learner and didn't want to go to school because they think maybe he was dyslexic. But, back then, 130 years ago, they didn't know what these things were. But still, he became one of the most famous people, a celebrity that we're still celebrating.
Well, perhaps maybe that's the most important thing we can learn from Babe Ruth is from early struggles and maybe being dealt a hand in life that is less fortunate you can overcome and accomplish great things.
And so for instance, when he was little, let's just start there, because I think that's what it is. It was called St. Mary's outside of Baltimore, and St. Mary's School for Boys. At St. Mary's, they were taught as little kids that they were going to have to learn a trade, because these were mostly orphans, very poor kids, no money, no family. So they went to school in the morning, were up at 7, went then to trade school. Babe Ruth learned how he was learning to be a tailor. He said even when he was a grown-up, he would stitch his own collars. His wife said he'd sew on buttons. And then in the afternoons, the boys would play baseball, basketball. Football was not around then. Any game that they could play. Well, Babe Ruth loved sports. And one of the brothers there, Brother Matthias, he would go out in the field, throw the ball up and hit what they called fungos. Just throw the ball and hit it as far as he could. And Babe Ruth said, I want to learn how to do that. And this is what he did. From 7, 8 years on, he practiced and paid attention. He knew what he wanted to do and he went for it. That's really what Out of the Mouth of Babe is all about. As we went through and I kept finding all of these quotes that Babe said, it was about him persevering.
Well, share with us some of those quotes that you found inspiring or meaningful to you, if you could.
Well, almost all of them are about baseball. My favorite has got to be, a fellow has to have something besides curly hair about his shoulders. He's got to know his onions.
What are onions?
Yeah, back then, onions was a term for your brain, which you've got in your head. Isn't that funny? So he said, you've got to know your onions. He also said, you've got to practice and practice and practice some more. That's all it is to baseball. A lot of his sayings are about being a part of the team, and how also, which I think is one of the most important, like the greatest curveball in the world isn't worth a dime if you don't know what to do with it. He also, think about it. It doesn't matter. He also said it does not matter how many hits you get if you don't make a home run. So if you don't get home, it doesn't matter how hard you hit the ball or how far you hit the ball or where you hit it. And conversely, if the team can stop you, if the guys on the field can stop you, you can't score a point. So he was really all about teamwork and very supportive guy.
That is inspiring. Was he just naturally gifted at just giving wisdom and pithy epithets? How did he just come up with these funny things?
I think a lot of it was time. Now, let's go back 100 years ago. When he was playing baseball in his early years, there was no TV, there was no radio, there were newspapers. And the sports reporters would actually travel with the team around the country on a train, eating their meals together, spending all of those hours in hotel rooms and trains with Babe Ruth. And he liked to talk. He liked to talk a lot. So what we have to thank the sports reporters for, we have a lot of his words on paper, and he had a lot of time to say a lot of interesting things. And he was a smart guy.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you also have to realize that back then newspapers were the way people got their information. And there were about 150 newspapers in New York. And they would put out like 4 or 5 editions a day. So there was a lot of space dedicated to the newspaper for sports and specifically for what Babe Ruth had to say.
So there have been some amazing athletes that have come around. We think of Wayne Gretzky, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan. We can go to Ronaldo. It's in all these different sports throughout so many different years. Why is it that Babe Ruth seems to collectively stand above them all in notoriety and just being so famous?
Firstly, I want to say that all of the players that you mentioned, the one thing that they have in common, Ronaldo, Muhammad Ali, Wayne Gretzky, even Wayne Gretzky, with his reputation for being ferocious, they're all very positive, very supportive. And the general message that they put out is about doing your best, trying your hardest. They were all very articulate and they were all very generous with other people. And I think that sets Babe Ruth apart along with them and along with the celebrities that have stood the test of time. It is their generosity, generous spirits, their ability to overcome, also their ability to articulate feelings that all of us are having and give hopeful messages. And he also, Babe Ruth, why exactly him? He was literally the first superstar sports celebrity. Primarily, that was because of his one guy named Christy Walsh. And Christy Walsh was a writer who they say may very well have snuck up into Babe Ruth's hotel through a window to convince him to join his team and let Christy Walsh manage him. And Babe, the biggest thing is Babe said yes. Christy Walsh said, "What do you think about going on the road with the team?" Yes. "What do you think about being in vaudeville and acting like a buffoon?" Yes. "What do you think about doing this interview?" Yes. "What do you think about writing books?" Babe Ruth actually, for quite a period of his time, wrote daily newspaper article about his game, his practicing, and how he hit. So really, his saying yes to almost all the opportunities is why we have such a record of him.
That's interesting. So basically, he was the social media influencer of his era.
He started it. He was the first one. Yeah. Well, you might want to say that Christy Walsh was the social media and he was the biggest star.
Wow.
And he would have been today, he'd probably be an Instagrammer or something.
Yeah, I'm sure he would, with millions and millions and millions of followers. And he clearly had first mover advantage, just like you said. He was the first one to do this, and that leans into how famous he is. So is there a particular story that you love about Babe Ruth that you'd share with us?
Yes. Babe Ruth loved little kids. He loved little children. I'm going to tell you, first of all, in the house that Ruth built, I share the story of how he met little Ray Kelly, his personal mascot, which sort of exemplifies how he felt about anyone. Babe Ruth got to games on time, but he loved little kids. And on the way to one of his games, he spotted little Ray Kelly, who was 3 at the time, playing catch with his father just in a sandlot. On the way to Yankee Stadium, Babe Ruth stopped, watched him, and said, "You know, this little 3-year-old, you've got something. Why don't you bring him to a game?" Right then, gave him and his dad a couple tickets to the game, and they went, and then little Ray became his mascot. And that is one example of how Babe Ruth would stop with kids. But then, while I was researching Out of the Mouth of Babe, I came upon a book written by a guy, and I'm sorry, I'm going to blank on his name, but you can read the book and find out. One of the peanut vendors at the stadium. And on Saturdays, before the games, Babe Ruth would practice a little bit, and then he would actually go down and sit with the peanut vendors and bag up peanuts. He'd laugh and joke and bag up peanuts and tell them, "You got to go to school. Go to school. If you want to be baseball players, you got to practice. You got to do your best." And then he'd toss them a couple dollars and they'd go buy soda pops or whatever. But he really loved kids.
He clearly just loved people, and he probably had a softness in his heart for kids, having grown up in that orphanage.
What's really cool is a couple of the guys that were in St. Mary's with him have written autobiographies. And time and again, the story will be how he gave up. They would get hot dogs, weenies on Sunday for dinner. He would have traded his hot dogs away by the end of the week. And then he'd also, because he worked as a tailor, he'd get pocket money. He would spend his pocket money on candy and give it to the little kids who didn't have jobs. Mm. He did not forget. And I think this is it. He didn't forget where he came from. He didn't forget the people that helped him up along the way. So when he became famous, he was still buds with all of his old friends also.
Well, it sounds like a fascinating book, a fascinating story, and even more that we can learn from Babe Ruth, not just the statistics, but the wisdom that he can impart to us through Out of the Mouth of Babe. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share with us before we end today?
I could talk about this a long time, and I hope you all will look at the book. What is so exciting about Out of the Mouth of Babe, it is not out of the mouth of Kelly. The book is full of quotes by Babe Ruth and anecdotes about Babe Ruth by different baseball players. Josh Gibson, who's now called the Black Babe Ruth of all time, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig's wife, managers. So when you go through the book, you'll find out this fabulous world of baseball back then, in its early days, and all the different people that played a part in it.
Well, I'm excited to get my copy. So The Out of the Mouth of Babe by Kelly Bennett will be available wherever books are sold. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us again today. Where can our guests find you online?
Well, come join me, my website, come visit me. And I also have a blog that's called Kelly Fishbowl. And in the blog, I do share a weekly poetry prompt that you all can try with your families, your friends, and yourselves. The same way that prompt is what prompted the house that Ruth built. So who knows what it can do for you? Thanks for having me today. And I hope y'all will enjoy the book.
You bet. Well, as we conclude today's podcast, I'd like to thank Familius for its support in bringing the podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribe to the podcast and left a review. And when you're ready for that next amazing book adventure, we'd be honored if you chose a book from Familius. One step at a time, one home run at a time, we can make the world a happier place.